U-Boot the board game. This is a fully cooperative board game in which the player or players will take on the roles of a crew of a German submarine in World War II, and your job is to sink as much enemy tonnage as possible and also to go back home alive. This is a pretty complex game, not the least because it is almost 4 mini games together. The game has 4 roles portrayed in the game that are the captain, the first officer, the navigator, and the chief engineer, and each plays slightly differently. Now, maybe you play the game Sonar or Captain Sonar that also has similar idea of unique roles, but here each role has a lot more going on. A lot more things that you need to do. The game, compared to Sonar or Captain Sonar, which probably is the most natural comparison that comes to mind, is a lot more complex, but also a lot more realistic. There definitely is a strong simulation element here. The game tries to be a playable, manageable, but still quite demanding simulation. Also, it requires a free companion app, so you will need to have a phone or a tablet open at all times as you play the game, because that is where you input information of where you're traveling and what you're doing, and then you will see enemy ships and the little periscope on the screen of your phone, and you'll try to sink them, and so you need that. Now, the game comes with a really impressive cardboard submarine, a large model of the submarine that you are controlling. Really neat, definitely. Well, it's quite a presence on the table for sure. And it is divided into different sections, and you will have those sailors that you see there moving around or running around like crazy and doing different things. Each area allows you to perform different actions. So, for example, the diesel engine room allows you to use the diesel engines. The torpedo room allows you to load, flood, and launch torpedoes, and so on and so forth. These cards here that are next to each section are a reminder of what the section does, and the icons also are a reminder of what the sections do. So to perform certain actions, you need to have the people in that specific location. And that's pretty much the idea. That's why you move them around. And after you move them around, you activate them, and we'll see how that works. Then we said there are 4 different roles. Ideally, you play the game with 4 players, so you have a player for each role. Otherwise, you need to divide the roles as evenly as possible among the players. If you play the game by yourself, then you will need to control all 4 roles, which is pretty demanding, but doable. And full disclosure, that is how I play the game, because these days I'm socially distancing from the rest of the world, even from my family. I've been spending a couple of days in my game studio because I had some symptoms, and I just want to make sure that I didn't pass any disease on to anybody. And so I've been playing this. But just to give you a sense, you will need to control these 4 boards, each one for each role, and there's just no way I'm gonna give you a full description of the game. I'll cover the main concepts, because otherwise this would be like a really long and boring tutorial. At the end, you would just be confused. Now, the general idea is that each role controls 4 sailors, as indicated by this token here, but this large player aid. And actually, each player controls 4 sailors at a time. You have actually 2 watches, 2 teams of 4. From time to time, the app will tell you that it's time to change the watch, and then you will magically produce another watch. When you activate your sailors, you will place tokens under them. As you can see, each has 3 spaces under him, so that's the maximum number of times that you can activate them without penalties. When you change the watch, you flip the cardboard piece to the other side, and now the same miniature is still, say, the white miniatures with the circular base, or the white miniature with the triangular base is still the same miniature, but it represents a different sailor that then you can activate by placing tokens there. Some tokens represent actions that take a certain amount of time to complete. They're not immediate, and so you place the token there. and you keep it there until the app tells you that the long-term action that they're performing is completed. Another interesting thing is that the game can be played at different levels of difficulty, including for each role. So you can have, say, maybe the chief engineer is more experienced, and then you put the app on the hard level for the chief engineer. The captain is less experienced, and then you put the captain on easy mode. So for each role you have easy, medium, and hard. The average role for the captain, it's in the average level of complexity tells you that when you change watch, you will flip the token like this. Otherwise, at an easy level, you can simply slide it. What is the difference? The difference is that when you look at the sailors, they specialize in different things. These icons tell you the things that they can do particularly well, and that means that when you change watch and you flip it, now the same miniature represents a different sailor that is good at different things. And so basically we need to spend orders to move them around to their position, as opposed to if you just slide it, they're replaced by clones of themselves, and so they are already in the position where they know what to do. I don't know if I'm clear, but if not, that's okay, because there's a lot of stuff in this game that may be confusing. I just try to get a general sense. When you activate a sailor to perform an action for which they have an icon, then you simply spend an activation, place an activation token there. You can still use them to perform an action for which they don't have an icon, in which case it costs an extra activation. If you're playing at the easy level, it costs no activations to give an order when they have an icon, and it costs 1 to give an order when they don't have an icon. The captain will give orders. A very important order is the mobilization. That is, everybody is allowed to move, and that is when you're planning so that you put everybody in position. Somebody will be there to adjust the course, and somebody to adjust the depth, and somebody to do some repairs. Because again, moving people around to different positions will cost orders. The captain has 2 tracks there. The track on top is the order track. When you give an order, such as everybody run to their position, that is how it works. And then you order, make a meal, use the periscope, adjust course, fire the torpedoes, etc., etc., etc. The orders go down, they are refreshed. Within watches, there are also other ways of getting extra orders. Other things, for example, if you're out of orders and you want to still give orders, you can give orders moving the guy, the token, on the morale track. This is the morale track. Other game effects will also move the morale track. When it moves, the token moves to the right, it's bad because morale is going down. When it moves to the left, it's going up. You feed your people, then their morale will go up. Yes, there is a procedure to make food, and there is a whole recipe book. I kid you not, there are different recipes that you can make. This is the level of simulation we're talking about. If you give your soldiers they're standing on the bridge, cigarettes, they like that. That release the stress. It's the 1940s, people didn't know what we know now, so it's okay, I guess. That also will reduce the stress, but the point is that when the morale goes up, is good. When it goes down, it will also force you to draw event cards, and the lower it goes, the closer to red the event card that you're drawing from the red deck is the worst, then the worst that is the events that you will find, all the way to mutiny, which is really embarrassing for a captain. So this is pretty much the general idea. In any case, you will move your people around first with the mobilization order, then the captain will tell you, do this, do that. To perform that action, again, you need to have the sailors in the location, the sailors with the icon of the action, in the location of the action that you want them to perform. You spend an order as the captain, the sailor, whoever is controlling that, because other people are also controlling sailors, will activate that character, and then you resolve the order. So this is the general idea. So the captain is mainly in control of giving orders, of adjusting morale, And that's a lot. Trust me, there's already a lot to it. The first officer, this is the border for the first officer, who is also in charge of medical supplies, of 4 sailors, and the officer is the one that actually effectively controls the app, will input all of the information, so it's a very important role. Then we have the chief engineer first, which is this board here. The chief engineer is in charge, mainly in charge of repairs, mainly controls the sailors that do repairs, has toolboxes represented by these cars that will give an advantage when repairing stuff. The chief engineer may have to solve a puzzle. You know what? I'm not going to tell you the details, but there is such a thing as a puzzle that needs to be resolved from time to time to repair something. A very interesting and challenging, at least for me, role is the Navigator, probably the most challenging. Navigator, the easy stuff that Navigator does is to make food by using food tokens that are placed here on this display. When you're actually using them to make meals, you will remove them from this display and place them here in the prepare meal area. You need to remove it in a certain way. Different combinations, again, different combinations mean that you're making different meals. If you don't feed your man, they're not happy. After a certain amount of time passes, then certain types of food will spoil and you need to remove those. So the menu becomes less varied. It's harder to keep your man in a good mood. This is the kind of detail I'm talking about. This is really detailed. But when it gets really tricky is navigation. Try not to get lost. The only way that you have to change the direction in which you're traveling is to input course, which is simply a number between 0 and 360. And so the navigator will need to become familiar with a couple of extra procedures. So this is the map that you will use to keep a track of your position. You have a pencil in which you mark your position, maybe the position where you want to go. Suppose, for example, that we're starting from here and we want to go here from 38 to 26. The navigator places the ruler here on the map, traces a line to connect the center of the 2 squares, and so say we're going that direction. After that, the navigator uses this instrument here, placing the 0 where the north is, placing the center in the square where we are starting, and then seeing where the line intersected the edges. Suppose we're going to 26, suppose that the line intersects it here. That means our course is approximately 307. And then we input in the app that we're going in direction 307, and this is where we are going. So far, so good. This is for plotting strategic movement. It gets a lot more complicated when we make contact. When you make contact, again, suppose, and so actually, you know what, so let's do this. So suppose the app tells us that we're making contact with an enemy ship, and it will tell us the bearing of the ship, which is the angle of the ship relative to our position, and also the course of the enemy ship, the direction in which they're going. The navigator will need to visualize that information here on this map for everybody to see. The way to do it is this, using this tool here, which is made of several wheels. First, the navigator places this arrow here, the U-boat course, to record the course that the U-boat is actually taking. Say we're going at 300. There you go. And then the app will tell us that there is an enemy that is going at a course of 40. Now we use this other arrow here and we place it in that direction. And then we're also told of the direction in which the contact is going, the contact course, and say the contact course is 10. Now, using this information that the navigator recorded there, we are going to put a token representing the U-boat there, going in the direction that we said we're going, which is that one. Then we take a plastic ship here and we place it relative to the U-boat. Remember, we're going this way, but the enemy is this way. We're also told the number of miles. Each square on this map is a mile, so the enemy is 3 miles away. 1, 2, 3. The enemy is approximately here. Plus, remember, we were told the contact course, which is the direction in which they're going. And we know they're going that direction, so we give them that angle. So from those numbers, the number of our course, the number of their course, their bearing, then we're able to create a situation like this. And based on that, then the captain will change course, change speed, decide to submerge, decide when it's time to use weapons, etc., etc., etc. So, well, this is pretty much the general idea. But let's just say that in a submarine, like in war, everything is simple and the simplest thing is complicated because it takes a lot of work to change speed, to change course, to change depth, to flood the tubes of your torpedo, launch the torpedo, cross your fingers, hope it does something, reload, submerge real quick because the convoys, the escorts of the convoy saw you, etc., etc., etc. But this is basically the general idea. You will move your people around to perform actions, to give orders, trying to catch those pesky enemies. The app will throw a lot of bad stuff at you, and you'll try to protect both the body of your people and the minds, because again, morale is a really big element of the game. You continue like this until you complete the mission, or you decide to call it quits, and then you simply end the mission early on, and you're still evaluated, you're still given your score, or one of many horrible things happen that will cause you to lose the game. You bought the board game. Oh my, this game is something. This is an intense experience, and the intensity begins before you even play the game. Because, and this is probably the biggest, I won't say it's a minus, but something I had to take into account if you're considering buying this game, the investment of time and energy to learn the game is considerable. The learning curve is so steep that, I don't know, we can barely speak of curve. I believe it's just a climbing wall. Especially if, like me, you are in quarantine and then you're gonna play the game solitaire, which is totally doable, but you have to do 4 times the work. I guess if you're playing with other people, then you can skip a little bit. You just breeze through the parts of the rule book that you're not planning to play presently, and then you just pay particular attention to the role that you've decided to cover with your friends. But it is a lot of work to learn. And again, also, if you're playing solitaire, it is a lot of work to make it work, but it's fun. But once you get there, once everything starts clicking together, once you figure out how to use the app, and that there's a great sense of satisfaction the first time you see an enemy ship, the first time you don't get lost, you don't hit something. The first time you see it is great. Then you're gonna look like, I don't know, you're gonna look like your navigator had too much to drink, although maybe they hadn't, just because then, okay, they're going that direction, here's the enemy ship, okay, that's us, we change course, and now we're here, wait a second, we want to be behind them, okay, no, let's go somewhere else and wait for them to pass us. They didn't pass us, what's happening? Those adjusting of course as you approach and look for the position to hit the enemy, that to me is the hardest part and the hardest role of the navigator. Other than that, and that's actually probably of all the roles, that is the toughest. But then you have a mini game to make food, and then you have to select the orders to give as the captain, and you're moving all of your soldiers, all of your sailors around, and they're never in the right position. Oh wait, hull breach, hooray! Meanwhile, the toilets are clogged, which, you know, at the beginning, that's one of the possible negative events that the app throws at you. And I thought, oh, well, come on, this is like ridiculous. And I thought, you know, in a YouTube, that can be pretty bad for the morale of the crew. I see how that can be bad. So you really have this interesting flow that feels very cinematic, as there is a lot of bad stuff going on, which may be menial, even trivial from the point of view of the theme okay, we run out of meat, whatever. But it has an impact on gameplay, and therefore it has an impact on your experience. So you have this balance here between things that seems menial, but in terms of gameplay, still consuming your resources, consuming your energy, consuming your actions, threatening your morale, forcing you to solve one puzzle after the other as you're trying to get everybody in position to do different things without consuming too many orders. So when you have these things, again, are thematically maybe menial and trivial, they feel just they're paying homage to the simulation, but they still work in terms of gameplay because they're still eroding your resources. And then on the other side, you have the epic battles. You have the excitement of the hunt, of staying out above the water for as long as possible, because that makes you fast, submerging just as close as possible, just at the last second to deliver the hit, and get the heck out of there because the enemy escorts will figure out where you are, and then all hell breaks loose. Like pretty much any submarine game that I played that feels like you're playing a submarine game, the pace of the game is uneven. But again, that is something that you have to deal with for a game that feels thematic with this theme, because you have just a long time in which you are looking for somebody to hit and nothing happens, and the toilet is clogged, and you got to make a meal. And then you have the big epic battle, and maybe you have this one battle in which you lose everything and everything is destroyed. So that's uneven pace is typical of this kind of games, but I think here that it's that element is less severe. Precisely again because the app makes sure that you have stuff to do and to worry about, even when there aren't enemy ships that you're hunting or that are hunting you. But also because you can manipulate the time. So when you set course and nothing is happening, then you don't have to wait for 15 minutes sitting there. Or in other games, you would have to go on 15 turns without nothing happening, roll the die on an event table 15 times without nothing happening, because you can speed up time and then time goes back to be real time when something interesting happens. In this sense, I have to say, I really like the physical production, and it doesn't feel like a video game with a material overgrowth next to it. It is a board game with this aid that comes from the app. But I really have to say that this element enriches gameplay. I think this is one element. I prefer material games, the tabletop games to video games, but this is really something where the digital element has improved the experience. Because I played a lot of other games where you roll on the table 20 times and nothing happens, then you roll that event, mega battle with the enemy, and you're lost and you lose. It's fine, but then it turns out after we do it with the app, at least I realize I like it even better. I think it's an improvement on the genre of submarine warfare. I think this is probably the best that I played. Not the most complicated simulation, not the most realistic, but the one that gives me probably the strongest cinematic feel. That feels like an action movie about submarine warfare, which is totally fine by me, in which the rhythm, the flow of the game is closer to that of a movie without sacrificing actually that element of simulation, because I still see that it took me hours or days to get to that target, although in my experience that was maybe just a couple of minutes, in which time was going very fast and I still had to worry about other things. So the theme and gameplay are perfectly integrated. The material elements are beautiful, fun to move around, and they are integrated so well with the app. It is an experience. I don't think it's a game for everybody, just because, again, the wall of the learning process. But if you can bring yourself, you can convince yourself to learn a game this complicated and go through the effort or set it all up, which takes a little bit of space, and play maybe even every role, this is a game that can be very rewarding. It can become addictive. There's just so much to it, with different missions, different stories, a lot of variety within each mission. It's a really great experience. It has that epic movie feel to it that makes it all worth it. So again, not for everybody, a lot of work to learn it, but boy, this is an epic experience once you get there. Highly recommended to motivated gamers.